This video has arisen out of one or two comments I've had concerning a couple of my recent videos. There's one chap who was so uncouth in his language, a born-again Christian, that YouTube put his comments in my, hold them till I determine what I want to do with them section. There's another woman who's got a logo which is a black cat, who was talking about, I hate you. And it seems to be because of something she thinks I said about her, what she called Jewish brothers and sisters. I can guess what it might be, but I'm waiting for a response. The first one, he's got an Israeli flag as his logo, or part of his logo. I think calling Sam Shamoun a degenerate was maybe one of the things that got him put in kind of prison, like, if you know what I mean. I did liberate one of his comments, by the way, so you can see what years of born-again Christianity can produce. Not all of it. A lot of born-again Christians are fine people, because I had fine comments from some of them. And by the way, I'm not talking about something's fine if it agrees with me. No. You born-again Christians know that I'm vehemently Catholic. I'm vehemently anti-Protestantism and born-again Christianity. But there's a way of doing it. That's the key thing. And I've had fine born-again Christians. But I'm afraid from that religion comes a good deal of vileness. Shall I tell you why? What it is fundamentally? Take Islam to start with, because you'll agree with me on this, born-again Christians. Islam, and I've said this before, it's not like Muhammad the Prophet receives from the angel Gabriel in a cave all this stuff, and then it eventually gets put in a book called the Quran, and then Islam proceeds after Muhammad's death to conquer various parts of the Mediterranean world, and then beyond that. That's their story. That's a load of baloney. We know that from the archaeology. Fundamentally, you've got what is apparently the fifth caliph after Muhammad dies, minting coins with pictures of Jesus on, with a flaming sword, with crosses on his coins. That's Muawiyah. This is the one who defeated Ali in battle. Ali was a successor of Uthman, who's a successor of Omar, who's the successor of Abu Bakr, who was the one who ruled the alleged Muslim world after Muhammad died. How is this Muawiyah breaching the rule about images, idols? How is he breaching the rule about crosses? According to these people, Jesus has come back to break the cross and kill the pig. That's the coins. Then there's the fact that wherever these so-called Muslims allegedly went, Spain, North Africa, Jerusalem, the Christians weren't describing them as Muslims. Ishmaelites, Hagarenes, Saracens, that's what they were. There's no Quran mentioned, no Islam mentioned. How can this be? Because all this stuff is written 200 plus years after Muhammad allegedly died. I say allegedly, we don't know when he really died. We'll never know what he said. The Muhammad of reality, as opposed to the Muhammad of faith, is unknowable. But we can know when he was not from the archaeology. So, why does Islam exist? Well, that's pretty straightforward. The Roman Empire, vast, Western and Eastern Europe, up to the borders of the Sasanian Empire, with which it was constantly in conflict. Then, I think it's 476, the last emperor of Rome sends the royal insignia to Constantinople. The Roman Empire in the West comes to an end. But the Roman Empire in the East continues. Now, as I've said before, from the 19th century, it got the label Byzantine Empire. Let's just call it the Eastern Roman Empire. I'll slip into Byzantine now and again, but never mind. Byzantium was the town. Then it became called Constantinople because Constantine, so almost, I'd say, guided by God, made his capital there because that meant civilization could continue when the empire in the west fell. So we have the Eastern Roman Empire, and at this point, before Muhammad was born, Justinian was emperor, and Justinian recaptured much of the west, not the whole thing, but parts of the west. Parts of Spain, parts of North Africa, parts of Italy, for a time. Muhammad, whoever he was born, and we could say he's the catalyst for this new religious idea, which is basically just heresy of Catholicism then, because the Eastern Roman Empire was Catholic. Why? Because in about 1095 in another video, I've got to double check this, that was 1085, Theodosius the Great, Theodosius II, emperor of the entire empire, he said that he made the Roman Empire a Catholic empire. Christ was victorious at this point. And so the empire carried on as a Catholic empire. When the Arabs launch out, and they're so successful simply because of a flea, the flea brought the bubonic plague to the Eastern Roman Empire and to the Sasanian Empire, the Persian Empire. First, the Eastern Roman Empire, the Sasanians wisely had a cordon sanitaire which held for 2 years. This is all in the decades before Muhammad. But then the plague, as it inevitably would, broke through, and the Sasanian Empire was ravaged too. It was in this context that those who were originally mercenaries of both the Eastern Roman Empire and the Sasanians were able to stop being mercenaries. These Arab tribes, the Ghassanids were one group, and these Arabs were followers of a version of Christianity akin to Arianism, the idea that Christ is either merely a man or he's a created being more than a man but not God. That would be a common creed in Arabia. With that ideology, but it not being an ideology counterposed to Catholicism of the Eastern Roman Empire, they nonetheless launch out into parts of the weakened Eastern Roman Empire and the weakened Sasanian Empire, and they completely conquer the Sasanian Empire. But my hero Heraclius, emperor, recovers the situation by withdrawing wisely troops from Syria and making it absolutely, well, not impossible, but extremely difficult for the Arabs to press in and conquer Constantinople. And the great structure, the Theodosian walls of Constantinople and what is called Greek fire combine to defeat Muawiyah's forces, which tried to conquer Constantinople. So the empire is saved. Though Heraclius, by the way, had been planning to leave, to send, this was before the Arabs, I think. This was to actually re-establish the imperial capital on Cyprus, I think. But he relented. Yeah, this was during the war with the Sasanians, which the Quran does refer to. Now these Arabs, at this point, are just Ishmaelites. They're just following a kind of a monotheism, which is a degradation from Trinitarianism. And our bishops don't speak of Islam, as I've said already. But what happens? As I said, at the time of Muawiyah, so we're into like 70 years after the alleged death of Muhammad, pretty much. We've got this commander of the faithful, as he's called, Muawiyah, who's minting coins, as I say, with crosses and pictures of Jesus on. Then he succeeded for a brief period by his son. But eventually someone called Abd al-Malik becomes the commander of the faithful. And he begins the process of creating Islam. Or kind of more charges up the process of creating Islam. Why? Because it's no use having an empire, which is now large, the Arab Empire was large. You're facing a resolute enemy, the Eastern Roman Empire, strong and Catholic. Faithful to the Pope. You look at what these emperors were saying in the way they conversed with the Pope. These were Roman Catholics. They knew the authority of the Pope. This was our empire. The Arabs were facing our empire without an equally strong ideology. You knit people together with ideology. This is why the British people are in the state they're in the face of Islam. Islam is making gains in this country. It's getting all kinds of concessions. Yet it is a minority. British people, native British people, are about 80% of the population, 85% of the population. But they're just constantly in retreat. Because the Muslims have an ideology. We don't. It's been taken from us. And I say that, taken from us, by the leaders of our culture. This goes back a long way, and it would go into a realm which I perhaps should not go into. Yes, so the Arabs need an ideology to knit them together, to face the Eastern Roman Empire. Thus, Islam develops. We've got Christ. Now, they can't just take Christ and say, and downgrade him. They need something as exalted as Christ. And if you look at what they say about Muhammad, their alleged founder, their alleged prophet, oh my gosh, I think it says they could drink his urine, something like that. I think there's a book called The Sealed Nectar, all kinds of strange stuff about him. It's not like, don't be shocked, you have to build up a figure to counteract the figure of Christ, whilst at the same time your development over history still has you having Jesus. Jesus is a central figure in Islam, really. You see it in the Quran. He's the central figure, him and Moses. Not Muhammad, mentioned 4 times. It may not even be as a name at the time, as a proper name. It can be simply the praised one, which could be Jesus. But nonetheless, the Quran is full of Jesus and Moses. And that's really full of the Old Testament and the New Testament, but all distorted. But they need something else. And they build up this figure Muhammad. It's an imperial project. That's why, you have the Umayyads, which is Muawiyah's people. Then the Abbasids come along. And that's Abd al-Malik's people, I think. I think he's Abbasid. And they rule and they develop an ideology. Perfectly normal. So I think we have to see in Islam not so much a spiritual enemy. Yes, of course, the devil uses all false religions. And I would say this, I'm afraid, to you born-again Christians, the devil is substantially involved in Protestantism. And I don't say that to offend you. I don't say involved in Protestants. Yeah, he certainly is with some. But I'm talking about Protestantism. And if you think that is being really, really unkind, and you're getting angry, think about this. This country was for 1,000... Britain. England. It was a bit later with Scotland, but England and Wales. 1,000 years. A Catholic country. William Cobbett says this in his Rural Rides. He saw what damage the Protestant Reformation had done. He's a Protestant. Rural Rides, late 18th, early 19th century. We had monasteries everywhere. Great houses of prayer. This was not just a house of prayer, these were hospitals. There were places for the poor to go when they needed help. And you do when you're an agriculturally based society, because harvests fail or they're not that good. And then massive starvation sets in, or you get injured. You need somewhere to go. Protestant Reformation destroyed all that. That's why Henry VIII invented the Poor Law, which failed. Then we had to have the new Poor Law. Okay, these are the practical problems with Protestantism. But what else did it do? It destroyed a culture, a civilization. Look at Britain now. It's just part of the Anglo-American Empire. British people have no culture. You go to Spain, France, Italy, they've got a culture. They've got a culture. We don't have anything like that anymore. But we had culture too. We did. Believe me, we did. But the Reformation destroyed it. It was a way of marriage, a way of interaction, a way of pilgrimages, a way of prayer. It was a way of being English, Welsh, and Scottish. It was a Catholic way. When you destroy all that, you leave people atomised. Oh, it's the start of the process of atomisation. But if you look at what we are now, we're to be little consumer units. You see, the Protestant Reformation set in train a whole set of actions, a whole set of events, which it's not responsible for in a direct sense, but indirectly it is, because it opened a way. Once Catholic power is deposed, that's the power from God, you put man-made power in its place, and you'll see where that's going to get you. We're atomised. No longer, Mrs. Thatcher said, there's no such thing as community, there are just individuals. She said that in the early 80s. People were shocked, but that's the way the country was going. What are we? The country is dying, and it has to go close to death before it can rise again. And that's why I'm so happy we've got a Labour government. The Tories would slowly boil a frog. The frog may never get out of the water, but with the socialists, with Labour, I call them socialists, not really socialists in a strict political sense, political theory sense. But these people, oh, by the way, socialism, communism, left-wing liberalism, well, apart from 19th century liberalism, but even there it's suspicious, all this is really about demolishing the traditional society, that is Catholic society. So you give it different labels, different degrees of this, that and the other, but it's essentially got that job, demolish civilization, because the only civilization worth the name is Catholic civilization. Destroy the family. That's the first objective, the main objective. That's what they've done, that's what they're doing, continuing to do. So, with Labour though, with two-tier Keir, we can look forward to the frog being boiled much more rapidly. And when you do that, the frog may jump out of the water. Yes, there'll be chaos, there'll be trouble, but the frog might survive. The slow boiling under the Tories doesn't do it. The frog will die. What has brought us to all this? Well, we have the Protestant Reformation. But it's not responsible for all this, is it? Except insofar as Protestantism is about atomised Protestants who have their Bible, they are their own Pope, and it's just me and God, God and me. That's not Christianity. That's giving in. That's giving in to the way of modern society which wants to destroy Christianity. It's a kind of, with all due respect to Americans, it's an Americanized version of Christianity. Not even the Anglicans were like that. False though their religion is, man-made though their religion is, a religion of robbers though it is not like that version of Christianity that comes to us from the United States, which is a degenerate form of a degenerate Protestant Reformation religion. But how do we get here? Well, we go from the French Revolution, demolishing Catholic power, opening the way to various things. I mean, we had a civil war in England. We killed our king. Wouldn't have happened had it not been for the Reformation. But putting that aside, major marker, French Revolution, 1789. By the way, if you Protestants think you've got prophets, and you haven't, they're all liars. We have. On I think June the 16th, 1789, the Estates General, which Louis XVI had called because his country was bankrupt because they'd lost the war, they had to spend a fortune on trying to defeat Britain in Canada and the war in America. The king called the Estates General together to try and solve the problems of the country. And there were the three estates, representing the nobility, and the middle class, and what we call the middle class, and the ordinary people. The ordinary people was a huge in number, and the other estates were lesser in number. So the idea was you would not merge the states, otherwise the lower class would dominate. But actually, I think one of them, nobility, clergy, and middle class, perhaps. I should look into these things look these things up and refresh myself before I do these videos, but I'm not planning to say some of the things I say, so you have to forgive me. Or don't forgive me, I don't care. So we have the three estates, keeping separate so that none is overwhelmingly powerful. The decision of the third estate to merge the states, to request that. And some of the nobility said no. Some of the bishops said no, but some did. And in the end, the estates were merged. And that fateful event was exactly 100 years to the day before Jesus spoke to St. Margaret Mary Alacoque, and we have the writings from then. What did he say? I'll tell you in a minute. Because of the merging of the Estates General, the French Revolution could proceed. There was nothing to stop it. And it culminated in many things. You've heard of the Great Terror. You've got this revolutionary phase, 1789, till, I think it'd be 1795, when the Directory takes over. So we've got ended that particular revolutionary government, Directory takes over, eventually Napoleon takes over, having been part of a triumvirate, which included a heretic Catholic bishop, Abbé Sieyès. But never mind about him. Eventually Napoleon takes over and makes himself emperor, right? But before that, during the revolutionary phase, the king, Louis XVI, is murdered. What he does, though, before he's murdered, in prison, he consecrates France to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. But he's still executed. Because it was too late. But why did he do it anyway? He did it because 100 years before, Jesus had said to this Catholic nun, St. Margaret Mary, the king, and that would be Louis the 14th at that point, who was master of his domains, the most powerful monarch in Europe. So what did he have to worry about? But nonetheless, Jesus said, the king must place my Sacred Heart at the centre of the kingdom. My Sacred Heart must be on all his banners. He must acknowledge me. Now, did Louis get the message? We don't know for sure. It seems he probably did, but we don't know for sure. But we know that he did not do what Jesus said to do. And it said, if he doesn't, there'll be ruin for the kingdom. Well, how could Louis think that? So powerful, Louis XIV, the Sun King. The ruin came exactly 100 years to the day after Jesus said that. That's prophecy, folks. And just to let you know, in Fatima, another prophetic event with the Blessed Virgin Mary, you know, the one that Christian Prince say we shouldn't have statues of, the one who's just the mother of Jesus, just the mother of Jesus, the one to whom we should not pray, who nonetheless seems to appear to us heretic Catholics, us blasphemers, us idol worshippers. Jesus and Mary appear to us more than to anyone else. We're you Christians when it comes to this, you Protestants when it comes to this. Mary appears to our children in Fatima and in Portugal. And a message is given, amongst many. They will consecrate Russia to my Immaculate Heart. This is, by the way, early 1917. May the 13th, 1917 is the first apparition. This is before the Russian Revolution of October 1917. We have the February 17 revolution where Kerensky, I think, comes to power. But it's not the full-blown thing. The full-blown thing is Lenin, October 1917. But heaven is now aware of the urgency of the situation. And the Blessed Mother is sent as an emissary to us, because she's a special emissary to us from God himself. Russia is to be consecrated to the Immaculate Heart of Mary by the Catholic bishops, especially the Pope, above all. They will do it on another occasion, Jesus says, to one of the surviving seer, Sister Lucia, who's now a grown woman, who was then a grown woman years after this event in 1917. They will consecrate Russia to my Immaculate Heart. But it will be late. Just as the King of France went into disaster, so shall my ministers. Folks, you're seeing the ruination of the Catholic Church because either this consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary has been done by John Paul II in 1982, and then with as many bishops of the world as he could get in 1984. Either that has been done, but it was done late. The Soviet Union was existing and strong and caused all kinds of trouble throughout the world in the intervening period. Or, as some argue, it has not been done because John Paul II did not expressly mention Russia. In which case, the disasters are going to unfold for the Church as well as the world. French Revolution then. That's the consequence of not listening to the Catholic Church. But when it happens because the Protestant Reformation weakened the Catholic Church. Oh yes, France didn't become Protestant, but the Protestant ethos penetrated France, surrounded. Well, England was Protestant at this point, no friend of France. Ideas were in the air in France. This was the age of the Enlightenment. Voltaire, the encyclopedists, all haters of the Catholic Church. Read Candide by Voltaire or Zadig, L'Ingénu by Voltaire. These men were greatly skilled in writing and disseminating their ideas, in propagandizing their ideas, and they were anti-Catholic. That wouldn't have been the case had there been no Reformation. Because I'm afraid Protestants, I know you love, and all that. Don't say boo to a goose. Don't slap anybody's wrist. But we're not like that. If somebody's promoting heresy, it's one thing as an individual to do that. It's another thing when it starts gaining traction, when you're gaining support. As the Catholic Church has historically taught, I want Catholics to listen to this, especially you who are wishy-washy. Error has no rights. That's the traditional teaching. You don't let heresy spread willy-nilly across the kingdom. The very state itself will be endangered if you do that. Error has no rights. So we would not allow all this trash to spread that gained such momentum that it brought down the French kingdom. And this was an ancient Christian monarchy. And you may love it, Protestants, that a Catholic kingdom was overthrown, but you've got your revolutions after that. As I say, your French Revolution of Blood, your Revolution of 1830, your revolutions of 1848 shook the very foundations of European civilization. It seemed at one point the entirety of European civilization could be overthrown. Fortunately, it wasn't, because the forces of reaction, and I'm a reactionary, the forces of reaction put a stop to it, temporarily. But we roll forward to the great prize, Russia. Holy Mother Russia. And I say that, though it be Orthodox and not Catholic, it's still Holy Mother Russia. And it should be for us Catholics too. We have our beefs with the Orthodox quite properly. They're in error in various ways. But it's Holy Mother Russia. Prize of resources, everything. And so it too was targeted. And what an opportunity was the First World War. This could have stopped. The Holy Father, Benedict XV, don't get him mixed up with Benedict XVI. Benedict XV, who was Pope from 1914, upon the death of Pope St. Pius X, until 1922, upon the accession of Pope Pius XI. Benedict XV was in that time of the First World War a most important pope for that reason. And he sought peace. He sought peace for the nations between us and our ally France and Germany, our enemy. Charles of Austria, the Emperor of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Catholic Empire, sought peace between our warring nations. Lloyd George, Clemenceau, not interested. I think it was Clemenceau. Not interested. They wanted total victory. Lloyd George, by the way, evangelical Christian. Am I related to him with my Welsh blood? I don't know, but you know the saying. You may not know the phrase Lloyd George, or the song Lloyd George knew my father, father knew Lloyd George, because Lloyd George was a bit of a a bit of a Jack the Lad. So many of us might not know, but we have Lloyd George's blood in us. Anyhow, Prime Minister, one of the craftiest Prime Minister Britain has ever had. He and his sidekick, his colleague in France, wanted the war to continue to the total defeat of Germany. The war could have ended in 1916. The British Empire would have been saved. Oh yeah, we won, but with a massive financial cost. The empire was weakened beyond redemption, beyond correction. Or maybe it could have been corrected had the Second World War not been something we again foolishly threw ourselves into. But just on the First World War now, could have ended. Britain remained strong. The French Empire remained strong. But above all, the Russian Revolution happened because of the collapse of the Russian front. And that meant an opportunity for the nefarious enemies of Christianity, the old enemy of Christianity, had an opportunity, and we eventually got the Bolshevik Revolution, the cause of so much misery in the world. So that's the Russian Revolution. And you know what? Karl Marx, in his 1851 work, why does it slip my mind? The 18th Brumaire of Louis Bonaparte. It starts off, his writing is brilliant. Not that I read German, but the English translation of it anyway. History begins as tragedy and ends as farce. History repeats itself, first as tragedy, then as farce. I think that's the correct quote. You know, the French revolutionaries saw themselves as embodying the great men of the Roman Republic. Danton, Saint-Just, Robespierre. They were all like this. Desmoulins. The leaders of the Russian Revolution saw themselves as the embodiment of the men of the French Revolution. So there's a certain truth in what Marx said. It's just that I would say history repeats itself, first as tragedy and then as deeper tragedy. The reason why Marx said farce, by the way, is that he's writing when you had the revolution of Louis Bonaparte in France, as if this was some kind of going to be a revitalisation of France. I think Second Empire France brought to a crushing defeat at the hands of the Prussians, who had united Germany, I think, in 1866. Russian Revolution, the pinnacle of evil. Nazism was merely a reaction to that. Fascism, merely a reaction to that. Just because it's merely a reaction doesn't mean it's okay. Not okay at all. The Catholic Church in Non abbiamo bisogno in 1935, Pope Pius XI now, condemned fascism. In Mitbrennender Sorge, which I'm probably mispronouncing, in 1937, the same Pope condemned Nazism. He had to smuggle that encyclical into Germany for Easter of 1937. And it seems that encyclical at least, maybe even Non Abbiamo Bisogno, was written by the Cardinal Secretary of State, Eugenio Pacelli. Eugenio Pacelli became Pope Pius XII, whom the Jews adored and gave great perorations to upon his death. But now, he's persona non grata. Everyone's got an agenda here. They've all got an agenda. So, just bear that in mind. The revolutionary phase has gone from, like Russian revolutions, French revolutions, to a new phase. In fact, it's an aspect of the old phase, because, just make a mistake, when Robespierre organised the Festival of the Supreme Being, that was to change the ideology of French Catholics. And they introduced constitutional priests, as they called them. Just as the socialists did the same sort of thing in Spain during the Civil War of 1936. Shameful men who will become constitutional priests, or the priests of the Madrid socialist government of 1936. In the Russian Revolution, of course, it was straight demolish the churches. Oh, by the way, the first law that was passed, if not the very first, but in relation to religious matters, by the Bolshevik government was an anti-Semitism law. Synagogues weren't treated like churches. They weren't demolished. I say no more on that. We must know who our masters are, and YouTube is hovering around. All right, the socialists, the communists, the Bolsheviks, introduced the very first abortion law, 1920. So you see, this is, and they believed in free love. Free love. And if you have free love, you've got to have abortion on demand, right? So this is not like just about, we'll own the means of production, distribution and exchange. I used to think socialism was about that, but I was studying political economy. Yes, and we'll get the workers under controlling this, and then we'll have a fair society. My 18, 19, 20-year-old brain couldn't process anything else. I wasn't really presented with anything else. But I learnt subsequently. So you see, the Bolsheviks were ahead of their time. Abortion on demand came to Britain in 1967, came to France in about 1971, thereabouts, came to Italy in about 1975. You see how it progresses? You get the most degenerate country, the most disconnected country from its roots, Britain. Then you get a country that's still got Catholic elements, France. Then you have to get a thoroughly Catholic country like Italy. You corrupt in stages. You get the weakest ones first, corrupt them, and progress accordingly. So it doesn't start with abortion, it starts with contraception. As a corollary of contraception, cigarettes. Women never used to smoke, you know. Never used to smoke. They would regard this as dirty, nasty man thing. But the cigarette companies wanted women to smoke because they wanted to expand their market. See, that's the nature of irresponsible, godless capitalism. It's no use being a Republican supporting Trump against Kamala. No, you support Trump as the lesser of two evils. He really is the lesser of two evils, but he is not good. We are Catholics, not born-again Christians. We must know this. American society is not the ideal Catholic society. There's the heresy of Americanism. Read about it. Pope Leo XIII wrote about it. I won't go into it now, but we have to understand our American brothers and sisters, don't be offended. I'm in heretical Britain, don't be offended. We're in heretical Europe, don't be offended. It's an heretical civilization, don't be offended. We go to women in the 1920s. A man called Edward Bernays, he published a book called Propaganda. Really worth looking at. This fella worked for the took a job with the tobacco companies to get women to smoke. He arranged shoots with beautiful models of the day smoking cigarettes. I think he may have arranged a march as well. And the marketing of cigarettes was to make women liberated. It worked. Women smoke. You know, Alco-Pops. I don't know whether you use that term, you American folks, but Alco-Pops are basically, I actually did quite like them actually, because I got a sweet tooth, not an alcoholic desiring tooth. You know, you've got like drinks which are basically, they taste like Ribena, like blackcurrant juice or orange juice, but they're quite a bit of alcohol in them. I could knock these back and get quite tipsy. But they're marketed. They all exist to get younger people into alcohol and to get women into alcohol. Babycham, that was always advertised when I was growing up at Christmas. Babycham, any man who drinks Babycham is like a bloke drinking Bud Light now. Babysham's a girl's drink. Warnings Advocaat. There's another girl's drink. This stuff is aimed at expanding the market as much as possible, be it cigarettes, be it booze. They don't have your interests at heart. Don't trust the capitalists. Yes, you can say we don't have a better system. Well, we do. Medieval Catholicism. Look at how that was run. Yes, we have to upgrade it for the 21st century. G.K. Chesterton sought to do that with his ideas of distributism. That's though 100 years ago now. We have to constantly rethink. But there's plenty of works out there, particularly from the 30s, because we were in a disastrous situation in the 30s. Plenty of thinking's been done about a proper economy. We are not to be saying to poor people, well, this is the system we have, capitalism, you ought to be buccaneering capitalist and stop whining. Stop whining, you've got low wages. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. That's not the Catholic way. Pope Leo XIII wrote an encyclical in the late 1890s, about 1893, I think. Rerum Novarum. A man should have a just wage enough to support himself and his family without his wife or kids having to go out to work. The market will not produce that in general. But if you don't do that, if you insist on the market, then men will not be able to provide for their wives and their kids. The Catholic family will be corrupted because of that, because, extreme poverty leads to corruption in itself. It will lead then to the woman going out to work. And you might say that's fine, but if you want to stop your demographic decline, then you better think twice about that. The kids obviously aren't allowed to go out to work now, but in the 19th century that's the way it was. A man should be able to bring enough home for the entire family to survive and to thrive. St. Paul says the man is the head of the family. He can't be if he can't provide. And we can't all be computer scientists, starting businesses and making a lot of money. The Pope's position was for every ordinary man to be able to do this. So I have to think through these things a little bit. I've talked about usury in the past. Usury is a great sin in Catholicism. We let the horse out of the door, horse out the gate. In 1555, when Pope Leo X allowed it for the Monte Pietatis, for charitable organisations. But it opened the door. And usury is everywhere. It's not even a sin anymore, in practical terms. We make it hard for working people. We cannot rebuild our civilization like this. We can't make the changes. We're not Christian Bolsheviks. But we have to know the way things are, why they're declining, and it will not be arrested by Trump or by Nigel Farage or by anybody who comes forward. Giorgia Meloni was a great hope for the Italians. No man is going to solve what's going on, because this is a sick society due to the devil having been allowed into so many areas, and now it is his kingdom. and you can't dislodge him unless you come roaring back to the Catholic faith. But you're not going to do that because now our society is wholly corrupt. Only Jesus now can do that. Even if we had another St. Pius X, he couldn't achieve what the actual St. Pius X did. There's so much corruption now amongst our clergy. I'm not saying they're all corrupt, but it gets to a critical point, a critical mass, beyond which one cannot go, beyond which we cannot retrieve the situation, though supernaturally it will be retrieved because the Catholic Church has survived 2,000 years without armies of any significance. The only institution to be able to do that. With our prayers, we could restore the situation. But it's only a supernatural power that can do it. Not the power that St. Pius X could wield as Pope in an earthly sense, inspired by God, of course, but in an earthly sense. That's no longer on the table. We pray to get it back on the table, but it needs God to intervene. So I spoke about usury, spoke about naked capitalism, spoke about the Bolsheviks, and now we have abortion on demand. Contraception, you're going to have that. You're going to have women's rights, women's lib. Feminism is a key satanic ideology because it means there's going to be mass murder of kids. Women can't be like men unless you give them all the technological means to lead lives without consequences for sexual activity. We men, of course, can do that. We know that. And it's not fair. It's not right. But because of our physical bodies, we can sow wild oats in every field in the land and go merrily on our way, whistling as we walk. Women can't do that. They're left holding the problem. That's another reason why a structured Catholic civilization such as England once was is needed again. Now I've rabbited on about something I was not at the outset intending to rabbit on about. So I'm going to stop this video. I'm going to have to do another video now to talk about the thing I intended to talk about. Anyway, arrivederci.